and if you can talk about that, maybe I'm giving too many prompts. Hello, folks. My name is Ben Pryor. I'm the senior producer at Kelly Strayhorn Theater. We're about to be checking in with Ishmael Houston-Jones. Let me see. Oh, good. Wait, we're waving at each other. Now, hold on. Here, let me go. Go live with Ishmael. Okay, I just sent you an invitation. Yes!
Hey,
hello.
You're on the phone. I can't quite figure out how to do it on my laptop.
Oh, you can't do it on your laptop. You have to do it on the phone.
Oh, cool.
Good.
Right.
Yes. Okay. Well, welcome, Ishmael. Hello, everyone, or Annie, or okay, we're starting to get some followers. We have 4 viewing with us now. My name is Ben Pryor. I'm the senior producer at Kelly Strayhorn Theater, and this is Checking In, artists from around the world. We are here with Ishmael Houston-Jones, who is many things, an artist, activist, choreographer, teacher, writer. I'm going to call you a poet. What else can we call you? Many, many things. Troublemaker. What?
Troublemaker, first of all.
And Bluebeard. Ishmael, will you tell us, maybe will you tell us a little bit about yourself, how, and why your beard is blue?
Yeah. Well, I live in the East Village in New York. And I was teaching at NYU this semester and at UArts in Philadelphia. And all of my classes went remote.
Yes.
And so I was teaching a composition class at the experimental theater wing at ETW at NYU. Okay. And I gave an assignment, and I said for the students to learn the choreography for Bill T. Jones's breathing show, and then to adapt it for themselves. Okay. And I told them it was a kind of a complicated choreography, but he explains it while he's doing it. And I said I'll learn it too, but if I don't learn it, I'll dye my beard. and I didn't.
But did you ever really plan to learn it, or?
Not really. Like I tried until I have the first 2 gestures down here, and that's about as far as I got.
It. And it's not the first time you've dyed your beard blue, also.
No. I had this dye lasts for a really long time. It's been in my medicine cabinet for like 3 years. So.
Wow. And where are you now? I'm going to guess that you're at Movement Research's offices?
Yeah, I have the key. I live in the neighborhood. I think I'm the only person from either the staff or the board who lives nearby. So I come in and check the mail, water the plants. And also their Wi-Fi is much stronger here than in my apartment. So when I was teaching, especially when I was teaching Zoom classes, It was, so I would have 20 students, at a time. Yeah. So it's better to come here and do it rather than do it in my house.
Sure, that makes sense. What was I going to say? Can you, I'm curious if you can say a little bit more about like yourself and your artistic practice, in terms of like sort of what that looks like regularly, if there is a kind of regular in a pre-COVID context, right? That your sort of days and time is mostly teaching, yeah.
Right. I mean, it would wane. And what my plans were pre-COVID were that I was going to be teaching a lot this semester. I had 2 classes at NYU and 2 classes at University of the Arts in Philly. And I was, doing that because I like teaching, but also for money. Sure. And then I was going to work on projects after that. So several of the projects have gotten sort of waylaid. Mm-hmm. One of which I can't really talk about in detail because it hasn't been announced yet. But Keith Hennessy and I got a rather major grant to do something in San Francisco.
Ooh.
Been extended, so it's a little bit wonky, but it was like a major chunk of change for working with sort of intergenerational groups of people doing a dance performance
To
piece.
make a new thing. Ooh. Okay, we'll be having a conversation about this offline later. That sounds very interesting.
Keith and I mean, we worked together. I mean, I just looked at my resume. Unsafe, Unsuited, a piece with Keith Hennessy and Patrick Scully was made in 1995. And Keith and I remained friends, but we've not like worked together since then.
Well,
Except in January of this year, we were invited to go to Amsterdam together to teach a class on critical whiteness to the School for New Movement, new school for New Movement Development. I used to teach there in the 90s, actually. But
how was that?
it was interesting. There was a lot of resistance. There were no American. I mean, part of it I understood because they had these two North Americans coming to Europe to teach this class. And so, I mean, I think they were using that as an excuse, like, why are we having these Americans coming to teach us? One African student, there was one Israeli, maybe a couple of people from Asia, but mostly Eurocentric.
Okay.
And we found, yeah, it was interesting. The resistance was really interesting to teaching. It was a 1 week long, but we had them all day. So Keith and I decided, like, oh, let's do something, and involving sort of the intersectionality of gender, race, age.
Yeah.
And so there'll be a group of San Francisco-based artists, Bay Area-based artists, but I'm sort of the lead choreographer on it. So that'll be interesting.
Wow. I was going to call out that you also at least did a little bit of turbulence with Keith also a couple times. I don't know if that counts.
Right.
Working together.
Actually, it does. Yeah. I mean, it was his piece, but like I was in that.
But you did it a number of times, right? You did it twice in New York?
Yeah, I did it at, I don't know if it was DTW or NYLA at that time. It was during the sort of transfer time. And then at Eurospace, American Realness.
But that was it. You didn't tour with it elsewhere.
No, I only did it. I was like, you always had like local guests wherever you went. And I was like one of the local New York guests when he did it in New York.
Keith is going to do my checking in show in August. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah. You might have more news by then.
I hope
or
so.
More news that
can
be told.
On what's happening. You know what I was thinking about before in preparation for this conversation. I was wondering if I was trying to answer this question based on my knowledge of you. Oh, I guess I didn't tell people how we know each other and whatnot, which is usually something I do. When I think about, I feel like the first time that I sort of knew who you were was, there was I think it was an ambush, a Shea Bushwick ambush that happened at, Ambush was a nomadic performance series that happened at, what was it called? Grace Exhibition Space. And I think you did an interview with Barbara as like a movement research person. And I think that was the first time that I was like, oh, that's who this dude is. Because I think I'd probably seen you at events in the way that people see each other at events in New York.
Was this before or after the American Dance Festival when you were in my...
Because this I think will be fun. Because then, so that was probably like 2005, 2006. And then I went to American Dance Festival as a 24-year-old in 2007. And Ishmael was having an audition for his rep. I remember being like, oh, okay, I know. This is this like downtown crazy guy. I'm going to do something crazy for the audition, and like you gave us, we had to improvise because of course you're an improviser, which I feel like you should say more about momentarily. And I don't know, I just remember doing like really big stuff out of like once we started. I was like, I'm gonna steal the attention, and then I'm gonna anyway, I got cast. It worked. And then I gave up ballet. I thought I was going to go to ADF to get training, and I gave up Jeffrey Bullock's ballet class to do Ishmael's rep. And then we became really close friends, and then worked together in a number of different ways over the years. Ish has been one of my. I think you were maybe the only person. You were like one of the very few people that I actually talked to about the name American Realness before I went and did that, I think. I don't know if you remember that. I think I talked to you about it. But like I didn't talk to
Definitely.
Miguel or Trajal about it. Like I remember like not telling them. I don't know. Anyway, but then we worked on the Them reconstruction back in 2010 and toured that all over. And the thing that I wanted to ask you was like, actually, how did you start dancing? I was trying to remember this from just my recollection of what I know about you, and I couldn't quite put my finger on like how that actually started for you. And I imagine it was, I go back to your time in Philly, but like, I'm like, but how did it actually, like, where, yeah, so I'll shut up. Maybe you can.
Really, actually, I just had this conversation with Tara Willis,
Oh,
actually. We had a Lions Jaw Festival was having these legacy
yeah,
talks, like people who are going to die, people who are going to die soon. They want to talk to us before we die.
yeah.
But she asked me, and it's like it's a really, really, really strange and circuitous route.
Mm,
I was a theater nerd in high school, but I was really awful at learning lines.
mm.
Really, like couldn't remember
Yeah.
lines, but I was like in theater in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I'm a total Pennsylvania person. It's funny that you wound up in
Yeah.
Pittsburgh. Because I grew up in Harrisburg, went to college in Erie, and wound up living in Philadelphia. So I never lived in Pittsburgh, actually. But anyway, so I went to college in Erie, Pennsylvania, had a really rough time there. It's a very small Catholic conservative school. I did a fair amount of drugs and other stuff. Only went to the classes I was interested in. There was no dance or theater. There was a theater department, but I was an English
Mm,
major because I was always a writer. And I always thought I was going to be a journalist or a poet. That literally, those were
wow.
my high school ambitions. Um, and I was telling Tara that during early 70s, there were student airfares where you could go to Europe really, really, really cheaply. And like I got on a plane and like everybody was a college student basically going to Europe. And to England with a friend of mine and started traveling through hitchhiking through Europe. Wound up in Israel because I wanted to visit a friend of mine from high school. And wound up sort of accidentally dropping out of college. This was after my sophomore year, so I'd been in college for 2 years. My parents were really pissed. I worked on one of the two places in the country of Israel that raises pigs for consumption.
Mm,
So I was a pig farm in Israel for 9 months, and then I moved and worked in a banana plantation, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, cutting down bananas, putting them on boats. I had danced in high school, also as part of my theater training,
okay.
just sort of
Like
jazzy
musicals.
jazz,
Yeah.
yeah, music. So I sort of knew, and I liked that. I mean, I liked dance because it was like I had a lot of energy, but I hated sports.
Mm,
And I felt like there's this thing I can do that makes me sweat, but I don't have to memorize lines, and I don't have to throw a ball or catch a ball.
wow.
So so when I came back to the States after a year, I didn't want to go back to that college. My friend Susan Lurie, who just retired from the dance department at Wesleyan
Mm.
University, um, we've been friends since sixth grade. She was going to Temple University in Philadelphia. I wasn't going to stay in Harrisburg, and I wasn't going to go to college. And she said, "There's room in the house I'm living in North Philly. You want to move? You move?" I did. Started taking classes at Temple University, sort of auditing. I never paid for any classes at Temple. They needed men, and they were like I was this guy, this dude who would show up and take semesters and semesters of classes for free. And then Susan was going to this event called Friday Night Workshops by Group Motion Media Theater. was this group, this company formed by German immigrants.
Mhm.
And after going to their Friday night workshops for a while, they asked me to be in the company, and I had never had any idea that I would be in a dance company. It wasn't, on the radar at all. And
Sure.
suddenly I was like dancing with them, and touring with them for a few years. So yeah, that's sort of like the condensed story.
Yeah, and is that the late 70s or when is that in time?
Early 70s. Early 70s. I moved there in 72. So I was in that company
70,
72
oh,
to
early 70s.
74.
Okay. And
Then I
then
worked with Terry Fox.
Mhm.
Oh, Terry Fox had also been in group motion. She's a big inspiration. She had dropped out before I did, and we formed this improv company because we really, I'm really bad at learning choreography, hence the blue beard. I can't learn. I'm sort of dyslexic left, right. Like I find it really difficult. But I like to move, perform, so I improvise. Terry's an improviser. She was living with a musician at the time, Jeff Kane. So we formed a very loose collective. Musicians would come over to their loft in Old City. We would dance. Occasionally, we would do performances either at the Painted Bride or in the parks or at the loft. And then another ex-group motion person, Michael Bielo, and I formed an all gay men's collective,
Mm.
and we did sort of gay theme in sort of mid 1970s gay theme pieces.
Wow.
One was called Dances Around Faggotry.
Mm. Wow, in the 70s also. I wish we could see that. I'm thinking about you.
There, there's video. There is a little bit of video that could be
Oh,
tracked
really?
down if you were ambitious. If you were
Wow.
ambitious enough to find it.
Of. Um, um, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about moving to New York. What I'm going to say, I feel like I don't know if this is really true, but I'm going to say that you were in and around the very early PS 122 situation. And I'm sort of curious to hear, I don't know if you can talk about that. I'm also curious about, I want to bring up your collaborations with Fred Holland also. And if you can talk about that, maybe I'm giving too many prompts. But I'm thinking about the poster that I know that Tara and I both have, and I'm sure others do as well, about your rules for contact improv with Fred. Um, so yeah, I don't know if you want to start with any of those.
Well, I always knew I was going to live in New York. And I remember writing in someone's yearbook in my high school that I was going to move to New York and be a short order cook and live in the village. I had this idea of being a poet in New York. I was going to track down, I did actually when I finally moved to New York in 1979, tracking down Allen Ginsberg. Like I was like totally, Diane de Prima. I was like really into the beats, and I really was going to be a poet and live in New York. So that was early on. But I moved to Philadelphia because I was a little bit scared and intimidated about moving to New York in my early 20s. So Fred and I met in Philadelphia. We were sort of part of a little small contact improv group there. Um, Coming up to New York once a week, a dance therapist, and to take contact classes from this guy, Danny Lepkoff. And I was drawn to New York. I knew I was going to move to New York. Fred actually moved to Berlin before he moved to New York, but we had been doing contact together in Philly. Lips are moving, but I can't hear you. Are you okay? I'll keep talking, and if I shouldn't, you should tell me I should shut up.
Hey, Amay, how are you? You know I'm waiting for Laura. Hi, Christopher. I'm waiting for my guest. Kiki! zoomies are on. Yes, we are live. And I'm guestless, so I'm waiting for my guest.